The sting of men's underwear slapping against my cheek jolted me back to reality. The first thing I saw was my mother-in-law viciously slapping my cheating husband, the yoga instructor. I watched the scene unfold with a cold expression. After several slaps, she approached me, taking my hand, her face filled with remorse. "Emma, I know you wouldn't cheat," she said. "It's my good-for-nothing son who can't tell right from wrong. I failed to raise him properly. Don't worry. I'll stand by you no matter what." Looking at her pained expression, I discreetly withdrew my hand. In my previous life, I was fooled by this very performance. When she declared that from now on, she had no son but only a daughter in me, I was so moved that I left with my 5-month-old adopted daughter, leaving behind the house I had worked for 6 years to buy. I embarked on a life of poverty, working multiple jobs to support my mother-in-law and daughter. I handed over every penny I earned to her for safekeeping, depriving myself of even the basic necessities. In the end, I died from exhaustion. But what did I get in return? Only after my death did I learn that my husband had been cheating all along. The money I had given my mother-in-law was funneled to him. The luxurious bird's nests and expensive herbs I bought for her ended up in the stomach of my husband's mistress, who was none other than the daughter of my mother-in-law's first love, Vanessa. Standing nearby, Vanessa's gaze softened toward my husband, which made my blood boil with rage. My mother-in-law picked up the divorce papers from the floor and said, "Emma, divorce him. Let's not keep this scumbag. From now on, it's just the three of us. Me, you, and the baby. I'll help take care of the child while you focus on your career. We'll live better without him. He'll get his karma one day." Yes, karma came, but it didn't strike them. It struck me. While I was alive, they drained me of my energy and resources. After my death, they even received a huge insurance payout. My husband used that money to throw a grand wedding for his mistress. In my past life, consumed by grief, I never noticed the subtle exchanges between my husband and mother-in-law, nor the sinister smile on Vanessa's lips. While my mother-in-law went to fetch the baby, she soon returned with the 5-month-old we had adopted. Looking at the baby's innocent face, a cold smile appeared on my lips. In front of the three of them, I tore the divorce papers into shreds. My husband, Jake, was stunned for a moment before he snapped, "Emma, you've betrayed me, betrayed our marriage. Divorce is the only option." Vanessa approached with feigned concern, lowering her voice. "Emma, a loveless marriage isn't a happy one. I admire your courage in seeking true love. Just like my mother-in-law, I support you in finding happiness." Without hesitation, I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. "What right do you, an outsider, have to interfere in my life?" Seeing Vanessa slapped, both my mother-in-law and Jake became visibly distressed. As they moved forward, I coolly dialed the police. "Hello, I want to report a burglary at my house." Both my mother-in-law and Jake were dumbfounded. "Emma, haven't you caused enough chaos? Apologize to Vanessa right now." My mother-in-law scolded me with a displeased look. "Emma, that's not right," she added. "Vanessa is just a child. You can't hit her." I looked at Vanessa, who was biting her lip, feigning pitifulness to gain Jake's sympathy. "A child? Huh," I muttered to myself. Without hesitation, I tore off the diaper from the adopted baby and threw it directly onto Vanessa. The contents splattered all over her pristine white dress. Vanessa screamed, and I crossed my arms with an innocent look. "Aren't you a baby? Time to change your diaper." My mother-in-law was stunned by my actions. She never expected the once gentle and considerate me to become so uncontrollable. The police arrived shortly after. I pointed at Vanessa. "She stole my diamond necklace worth $50,000. Vanessa immediately panicked. "No, I didn't. She's framing me." I calmly returned to my room. In my past life, I was so distracted by false accusations that I forgot about the surveillance cameras I had installed after adopting the baby. I retrieved the memory card, inserted it into my computer, and soon, footage appeared on the screen. It showed Vanessa stuffing men's underwear into my bag, and when she tried to put it back, a $9.99 fake diamond necklace fell to the ground. She picked it up, kissed it with delight, and pocketed it. With the evidence in hand, Vanessa had no way to refute it. My mother-in-law was equally dumbfounded. When the police were about to take Vanessa away for questioning, she finally panicked. "Emma, let's keep this within the family. There's no need to involve the police. I'll pay you back." I smiled. "Are you sure you want to compensate me? That necklace is worth $50,000. My mother-in-law, fearing Vanessa's arrest, reluctantly agreed. In front of the police, she transferred $50,000 to me as a gift. As the police left, Vanessa shot me a hateful glare. I paid no mind to the chaos. Getting $50,000 in exchange for a $9.99 necklace was definitely a win. I walked up to Jake, using chopsticks to pick up the men's underwear that had fallen to the floor. It was clearly a man's worn pair, not at all like the style he usually wore. "Miss Vanessa, where did you get this from?" I asked. "If it's from a regular male friend, he wouldn't give you something he's worn. Unless," I trailed off, letting the words hang in the air. Jake's suspicious gaze shifted toward Vanessa. After being with Jake for so many years, I knew better than anyone that once a seed of doubt was planted in his mind, it would inevitably take root and grow. Turning away, I headed to my room as the baby started crying. "Emma, the baby is looking for mommy. Please, calm her down." My mother-in-law called after me. I glanced at the crying child. It would be a lie to say my heart didn't ache. But knowing she was the illegitimate daughter of Jake and Vanessa, I steeled my resolve. Since the adoption process wasn't finalized, I decided not to adopt her after all. The color drained from both Jake and Vanessa's faces. Jake returned to our bedroom around 10 p.m. I didn't kick him out after all. My plan was still in motion. He wisely stayed on his side of the bed, keeping his distance. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the feeling of something soft and fleshy under my right hand. In the moonlight, I realized that my mother-in-law was sleeping between Jake and me. Nausea churned in my stomach. I had always taken sleeping pills, which usually knocked me out until morning. But last night, in my excitement over my rebirth, I had forgotten to take them. Could it be that for the past 7 years, my mother-in-law had been climbing into our bed every night? I was about to turn on the light when I saw my mother-in-law sit up. To my horror, she leaned over and kissed Jake on the forehead. Jake, half awake, murmured, "Mom, go back to sleep." She obediently lay back down, patting his butt like a child. "Good boy. Sleep tight," she cooed, while Jake casually draped an arm around her waist. I was utterly shocked. The next morning, when I woke up, both Jake and my mother-in-law were gone. Checking my phone, I saw unread messages in Jake's family group chat. Normally, this chat was silent except for holidays, so I was puzzled. I opened it and saw countless mentions of me. Scrolling up, the first message caught my eye. It was from my dear mother-in-law, tearfully holding the baby on camera. "My life is so hard. Just when I thought I could enjoy being a grandmother, Emma broke her promise to adopt this baby. How could she be so heartless? She can't even accept a 5-month-old baby. She can't have children of her own. And now she's letting this poor baby and an old woman like me suffer. Will I have to leave this world with regret?" No wonder I was being flooded with notifications. Fine, I thought. If you want to play, I'll play along. I glanced at the working surveillance camera above me, copying last night's footage of her climbing into bed. To ensure maximum visibility, I sent out several large red envelopes in the group chat. As more people joined to grab the money, I released the video, adding my intentionally tearful voice. With such an unhealthy environment, how can I even consider adopting a child? The chat exploded, filled with mocking and condemning comments. Before long, my mother-in-law burst into my room. "Are you insane? How could you post that video in the family chat? So what if I was cuddling Jake? He's my son, the one I gave birth to. If I want to kiss him or hold him, that's my right." Her words shattered my worldview. Unfazed, I posted both the video and her outrageous comments on my social media. Unlike the family chat, my social circle included coworkers and company executives. The fallout was swift. Jake was suspended from work. Furious, he came home and smashed everything in the living room. Even my mother-in-law was terrified. As he tried to take his anger out on me, I pulled out a pregnancy report. "I'm pregnant," I declared. Jake snatched the report. examining it carefully. A mocking smile played on my lips. Reports like these could be bought online for 50 cents. Is it true? Are you really pregnant? He asked, his voice trembling. I smiled sweetly. Of course it's true. Condoms aren't foolproof. Especially that time 2 months ago when you were drunk. And we didn't use protection. Jake was silent for a long moment, then rushed to tell my mother-in-law the news. That evening, she prepared a lavish dinner. Mom, I said sincerely. Jake, I'm pregnant now. Let's just put the past behind us and live happily. Let's focus on the future. After all, Vanessa has always called Jake Big Brother. Why don't we invite him over? I suggested. Living alone in a rented apartment must be hard for him. Jake thought for a moment, then called Vanessa. For once, my mother-in-law even made chicken soup. I don't know how Jake convinced Vanessa, but when she arrived, she no longer spat venom at me. Instead, she sweetly called me sister-in-law. And I happily played along. Vanessa stood by anxiously, wanting to help but too scared of my father-in-law's fists. In the end, it was the neighbors who pulled him away. Even then, he yanked my mother-in-law's hair and delivered 2 more punches. She didn't dare utter a word, perhaps out of guilt. This time, Mr. Moo chose not to call the police. Instead, he slinked away in shame. Jake's infidelity had caused such a scandal that his company immediately fired him, with no job and no confidence left. He assumed that my silence on the divorce meant I had forgiven him. He became even more attentive to me than when we first got married. My best friend was puzzled as to why I continued to live under the same roof as him. I merely smiled mysteriously. 2 weeks later, news came from the countryside. My father-in-law had forcefully taken my mother-in-law back to their hometown. Unwilling to part from Mr. Moo, she mixed rat poison into my father-in-law's drink. He was poisoned on the spot. In his final moments, he forcefully poured the remaining half glass into her mouth. He died on the way to the hospital, and she succumbed 2 hours later. Jake, having lost both parents, was utterly devastated and locked himself away at home. I, as the dutiful daughter-in-law, took care of their funeral arrangements. I packed their ashes into garbage bags and scattered them among stray dogs on the roadside, watching the wind blow the ashes away as the dogs tore into the bags. I laughed. In my previous life, my mother-in-law had tossed my ashes into the trash just like this. That very night, Jake clung to me, sobbing, "Emma, you're all I have left now." Suppressing my disgust, I held back the urge to push him away. "Honey, let's sell the house in the countryside." He looked up, confused. "That's my parents' legacy." Feigning hesitation, I said, "Your parents are gone now, and the rural house isn't worth much. I have a friend willing to buy it for $10,000. But if you don't want to, that's fine." Jake thought it over and finally agreed. "If your friend is offering $10,000, then let's sell." Right in front of him, I called my friend to finalize the deal. The next day, Jake completed the inheritance procedures, allowing him to sell the house freely. I took my friend straight to the property registration office. To please me, Jake even had the payment transferred directly to my account. Within minutes, the house was sold. My friend and I exchanged a knowing look. Only we understood what that meant. 3 days after the sale, Vanessa came knocking again. This time, I didn't stop them from meeting. Instead, I used the excuse of going shopping with my best friend to leave the house. Half an hour later, through the home surveillance camera, I watched Jake and Vanessa embrace once more. A dog will never stop eating its own filth, I muttered. For a month, this continued until Jake finally asked for a divorce. The reason? Vanessa was pregnant again. This time, I agreed without hesitation, using his infidelity as grounds. I took all the money in the house, desperate for Vanessa to give birth to his child legitimately. Jake agreed to leave with nothing. The moment I received the divorce certificate, I couldn't stop smiling. Vanessa accompanied Jake to the civil affairs office and taunted me. "Emma, you lost in the end." I spat on the ground. "If you enjoy digging through trash, go ahead. I have no interest." Vanessa, full of herself, smirked. "At least we still have the house in the countryside. I heard it's about to be demolished. We'll get a $300,000 compensation." I glanced at Jake. who had just walked out of the office. Clearly, he hadn't informed Vanessa that the house had already been sold. We're about to become millionaires. Vanessa gloated. I sneered. Just make sure you don't end up begging at my doorstep. I don't deal with swine. With that, I turned and got into my best friend's car. As Vanessa and Jake were registering their marriage, I received an offer letter from the company headquarters. A position Jake had always longed for but never attained. I posted a picture of the letter on social media, imagining Jake's fury upon seeing it. Using what little savings he had left, Jake and Vanessa held a modest wedding. There was no dowry. Mr. Moo, drunk at the wedding, erupted in anger. According to friends, Jake was slapped hard by Mr. Moo in front of everyone and called a worthless idiot. The wedding ended in chaos. I paid no attention, too busy preparing for my new role at the company headquarters. The next time I saw Jake and Vanessa was back in the countryside. I had just signed an agreement to approve the demolition of my newly acquired property with the company of friends, and my bestie, Vanessa, heavily pregnant, was holding on to Jake. Why are you here? She asked in surprise. Smiling, I showed her my phone screen, displaying the message confirming the receipt of the demolition compensation. You have a house in the countryside? I laughed. Of course. Thanks to your wonderful husband selling it to me. Vanessa's face turned pale as she grabbed Jake by the collar. When did you sell the house to her? I was counting on that compensation to raise the baby. You've been deceiving me this whole time. Jake shoved her away. You tricked me. I shrugged. With idiots like you, there's no need for tricks. Jake froze, recognizing the man standing next to me. He was the same friend who had bought the house. He's with me, I said with a smirk. Where's your money? Jake asked. I sighed. I gave it all to your mother for living expenses. But now I deeply regret it. She probably spent it all on Mr. Moo. She only pretends to care for you. Her son. Jake's eyes grew colder. After a long pause, he pulled out a bank card from the innermost pocket of his coat. Take this and use it to hire a lawyer. I took the card. All right. I'll get a lawyer right away. Leaving the detention center, I immediately went to the bank. Seeing a balance of $500,000 in the account, I trembled with rage. In my past life, Jake had convinced me to cover all household expenses so he could save up for a bigger house. In my love-blinded state, I never questioned where his salary was going. I reviewed the transaction history and discovered that on the day of every paycheck, Jake transferred $10,000 to Vanessa. The thought of me scrimping and saving while she effortlessly received a hefty allowance every month made me clench my fists in fury. I tracked down Vanessa and offered her $100,000 to drop the charges. Seeing the money, she agreed. Using Jake's account, I transferred the money to her, and she withdrew the complaint. Jake was released shortly after. The first thing Jake did upon his release was to storm over to Mr. Moo's house, looking to vent his anger. But instead of succeeding, he was beaten black and blue by the martial arts trained Mr. Moo. I didn't rush to divorce him. Instead, I cooked a lavish meal to celebrate his return. Jake, touched by the gesture, softened. I even playfully took a photo of us holding hands and posted it on social media. Vanessa saw the post and, despite not being fully recovered, showed up at my doorstep. I had to admit, she was skilled at charming men. Before long, Jake, who had been furious, was pacified by her sweet talk. Watching from a distance as Jake gently embraced Vanessa at the doorway, I dialed a number. The call was quickly answered. You can step in now, I instructed. Not long after, a tall, muscular, stylishly dressed man wearing a mask exited the elevator and walked straight up to Vanessa and Jake. Baby Vanessa, he called out, which left Jake stunned. Who are you? Jake demanded. The man pulled Vanessa out of Jake's arms. I'm Vanessa's boyfriend. She's only with you for your money. And all the money you gave her? She spent it all on me. The baby she lost was mine, not yours. The revelation sent Jake into a fit of rage, and he swung a punch. The man swiftly caught his wrist, twisted it, and threw Jake to the ground, pressing his foot on Jake's chest. He growled, Vanessa is mine. If you dare to bother her again, I won't let you off easily. With that, the man turned and left. As he stepped into the elevator, I transferred $1,000 to him as agreed and promptly deleted his contact. Jake, getting up from the ground, glared at Vanessa with hatred. How dare you betray me? Vanessa trembled with fear. Jake, I don't know that man. I really don't. But given Jake's suspicious nature, there was no way he would believe her. Get lost. You, he shouted. The commotion had already drawn the attention of our neighbors. Vanessa, ignoring the whispering crowd, grabbed Jake's hand. Jake, you misunderstand. I really don't know that man. Didn't you promise to divorce her and be with me? Even though I lost our second baby, we still have our first child. Once you divorce her, we can bring our child back and live happily together as a family. Vanessa's words only confirmed Jake's infidelity. Seizing the moment, I rushed out, tearfully confronting him. Honey, I love you so much. How could you betray me? How could you do this to me? Not wanting to lose her golden goose, Vanessa possessively clung to Jake's arm. I've been with Jake for a long time. The unloved one is the mistress. So just hurry up and divorce him already. The neighbors whispered among themselves, the crowd growing larger. I raised my voice. I kept quiet to protect your reputation, hiding the fact that you and your mother shared the same bed with me for years. Yet you still cheated on me with another woman. You've gone too far. I'm divorcing you. Vanessa, realizing the growing disdain from the onlookers, tried to drag me down with her. What's wrong with sleeping in the same bed as your own mother? We've done it many times. Her words enraged Jake further. Shut your mouth, he roared, gritting his teeth. Vanessa bit her lip, looking pitiful. But the damage was done. Jake's reputation was now in tatters. News of his relationship with his mother and her old lover under the same roof quickly spread online. I sent a video of my mother-in-law and Mr. Moo dancing together in the park to Jake's father, who had been living quietly in the countryside. Enraged, Jake's father showed up at the house, though he didn't know how to dance. He was infamous in the village for being a tough brawler. After knocking my mother-in-law to the ground, he got into a brawl with Mr. Moo. Despite Mr. Moo's martial arts skills, Jake's father, relying on his sheer size, managed to pin him down. By the time I arrived after receiving a call, Mr. Moo's face was already bruised and swollen from the beating. Soon, my mother-in-law brought a bowl of chicken soup to me. Emma, your pregnancy is such a joyous occasion for our family. This chicken soup took me over 2 hours to make. You need to drink more, she said, resting my chin on my hand. I smiled. Mom, your kind gesture won't go to waste. I'll drink plenty. But please, serve Vanessa some too. Chicken soup is great for a young woman's complexion. My mother-in-law quickly served Vanessa a bowl. I raised my bowl with a smile. Vanessa, let's use this soup as a toast. Let bygones be bygones, I said. Vanessa hesitated, glancing at my mother-in-law, who nodded encouragingly. Only then did she start drinking the soup. I didn't let my mother-in-law down either. I drank more than half the bowl in one go. Mom, this chicken soup is really delicious, I said, just as Vanessa suddenly fell off her chair, clutching her stomach and breaking out in a cold sweat. It hurts so much, she groaned, her white dress quickly stained with blood. Amid the chaos of my mother-in-law's and Jake's panic, Vanessa was rushed to the hospital, where she slipped into a coma. Though her life was saved, Jake's long-awaited second son was lost. When I walked into the hospital room, Vanessa had just regained consciousness. Jake and my mother-in-law had gone downstairs to pay the hospital bills. I stood at the foot of her bed, arms crossed. What a pity, I said with a cold smile. It was a boy, but your own grandmother killed him. Looks like your dear mother-in-law was willing to pay a hefty price for her son's exclusive affection. Struggling to sit up, Vanessa weakly asked, What do you mean? I pulled out her medical report. The doctor found traces of safflower in your system. You know as well as I do that my mother-in-law often drinks safflower tea. She's well aware of its harmful effects on pregnant women. The chicken soup was loaded with safflower. I showed Vanessa the video footage of my mother-in-law climbing into bed and gently patting Jake to sleep. Watching it, Vanessa turned pale and threw up. Smirking, I left the room and bumped into my mother-in-law, who was carrying a large bag of expensive blood-nourishing supplements. So generous, aren't you? I scoffed. All this effort for the daughter of your first love. I leaned in close and whispered into her ear. Too bad you didn't cause me to miscarry. But instead, your first love's daughter lost her baby. Mom, how will you explain this to your old flame? My mother-in-law's face turned ashen. You switched the soups, she accused. I smiled. I've been having blood stasis lately. The safflower you added actually helped improve my circulation. Thank you, Mom, for taking care of my health. Realizing the full extent of my plan, my mother-in-law growled. I'll tell Jake your pregnancy is fake. I shrugged. Better check on Vanessa in the hospital room. After all, she's still weak after the miscarriage and nearly fainted earlier. With a furious glare, my mother-in-law hurried back into the hospital room. About 3 minutes later, Jake arrived. Pushing down my disgust, I threw myself into his arms. Honey, I checked the surveillance footage. Vanessa put the safflower in the chicken soup herself. Maybe the baby wasn't even yours. She probably used this opportunity to cover up the truth. I showed him a pre-prepared AI-generated video of Vanessa secretly adding safflower to the soup. Jake's face turned red with rage. He stormed into the hospital room, and through the crack in the door, I could see him grabbing Vanessa by the throat. Smirking, I thought, Vanessa, this is exactly what you deserve. However, Vanessa wasn't choked to death by Jake. Her father, Mr. Moo, arrived just in time, kicking Jake away. As Jake lay sprawled on the floor, my mother-in-law didn't even acknowledge him but instead approached Mr. Moo with a smile. The older man's eyes were filled with tears. You promised to take care of my daughter, and this is how you treat her. I'll be pressing charges for intentional harm. Mr. Moo called the police, and Jake was taken away. The next day, I visited him in the detention center. He looked haggard, his hair disheveled after just one night. Where's my mother? He demanded. I sighed. She's staying with Mr. Moo. I heard there's a young man at their house now. Could it be Vanessa's boyfriend? Bang! Jake slammed his fist on the table, his eyes burning with rage. Get me a lawyer. I have to get out of here. Feigning helplessness, I replied, I have no money. Jake's lips trembled, but he had no response. Jake was trembling with rage. Emma, I'll kill you. Before his hand could even touch me, my best friend, who happens to be a taekwondo expert, delivered a swift kick to his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. I watched as 2 of his front teeth scattered across the floor. Jake, now even more worthless than before, lay there humiliated. Vanessa, who had only married Jake for the demolition compensation, was furious. Her pregnant belly heaved as she screamed, You good-for-nothing liar. I'll kill you for this. Already seething, Jake couldn't take the public humiliation. Enraged, he punched Vanessa in the face. She lost her balance, fell to the ground, and landed hard on her stomach. Screaming in pain, blood soon soaked her pants. Jake panicked, his hands trembling as he dialed for an ambulance. But given the poor roads in the countryside, it took 20 minutes for help to arrive. With a detached sense of amusement, my best friend and I went to the hospital. Vanessa's condition was far worse than last time. Though the baby was delivered, it suffered severe cranial trauma during birth. Despite the doctor's efforts, the baby was pronounced dead just 30 minutes after being born. Vanessa, though surviving, had to have her uterus removed due to severe hemorrhaging, leaving her unable to bear children. She was utterly devastated. Instead of divorcing Jake, they continued to live together like bitter enemies, constantly fighting. With Vanessa now infertile, the couple's thoughts turned to the child I had sent back to the orphanage. But it was too late. The child had already been adopted 6 months earlier. I wanted nothing more to do with this insane couple, but they decided to start a live stream, twisting the truth and accusing me of scheming to steal their compensation money. Watching them tearfully slander me on camera, I decided enough was enough. I forwarded all the evidence I had gathered about their deliberate abandonment of the child to the relevant authorities. They were taken into custody during a live stream, as they were convicted of child abandonment. I boarded a flight to the company headquarters. My performance at work impressed the higher-ups, and over the following months, I led my team to secure several major projects. The company rewarded me handsomely with a significant bonus and promoted me to director. During a vacation, I returned to Heischer and met up with my best friend for dinner. That's when I saw Jake scavenging for food next to a dumpster, fighting stray dogs for scraps. It turned out he and Vanessa had been released from prison, but Vanessa had quickly abandoned him for an old man after her release. Vanessa, having been injured in prison during a fight, was left with a broken leg. Watching Jake struggle to crawl, I lifted my wine glass with a contented smile. To a beautiful future. I toasted, savoring the rich taste of the red wine. I let the sun's rays wash over me, dispelling the shadows of the past. Onward and upward. Emma, I whispered to myself.